Good afternoon. This is Nat Wood, and once again you're watching 30 Frames a Second. Today we're going to be talking about an issue that goes under the radar far too much, but it is very, very important. We're going to be talking about mandatory vaccines. Mayor Michael Bloomberg introduced a bill, a proposal to give mandatory vaccines to children under the age of 5. And we're going to be talking about that issue and some other issues that relate to, well, some other things that relate to the drugging of especially black and brown people, but children in and around the United States. It is my honor to have with me today the one and only Colia Clark and the trumpeter in the fight against the vaccines of children and people, Sallie O. Elkordy. That's a mouthful. With that, when they get my opening ready, they'll run it, and we will be back. Into the fact where the victim is now the perpetrator and the perpetrator is now the victim. And that just drives me crazy. And we are back. Good afternoon. As I said before, you're watching 30 Frames a Second, and my guests today are Colia Clark and Sallie O. Elkordy, and they're going to be talking about the upcoming City Council hearing on vaccinating our children. So with that, I'm going to hand it over first to Sallie, and she's going to try to explain a very complicated issue.
Yes.
As simply as possible, because we're talking to people, we're not talking to lawyers.
Right. Okay. Well, first I would like to say that the hearing on vaccine mandates transpired on October 23rd. And I'd like to hold up my sire, vaccine-free NYC, this is what we're shooting for. But in fact, mandates this is how complicated it is, but I'll break it down for you. October 23rd, there was a hearing on the potential of mandating children in preschool, daycare, and kindergarten, which is through the age of 5, with the flu shot, which is all flu shots are the H1N1 flu shots, and the pneumococcal shot, which is the pneumonia, which has a myriad of strains of viruses within it. But it also said on page 8 of this proposed resolution that any additional vaccine may be required. According to the National Vaccine Information Center, there are 271 vaccines in the pipeline. So this is huge. What is also huge is that I understand that there is a cap on religious exemptions for what would be one less than the CDC schedule, which would be 48 vaccines.
No, hold up. Let's take it one step at a time. The first thing you said was that on
October 23rd.
October 23rd,
yes.
Mayor Bloomberg proposed mandatory vaccines of children in school under the age of 5. Preschool, kindergarten, and I forget the other one.
And daycare.
And daycare.
Yes.
And the proposal was specifically for two specifically, that was pneumonia and flu. And any other vaccine that they deemed necessary.
Required.
Is that required?
Yeah.
But and you said there are over 200 that could be proposed, but I'm assuming that they're not talking about 200 vaccines. It's like whatever they feel is required, they maintain the right to give to your child.
That's what it says on page 8 of the resolution,
okay,
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's frightening beyond word. Many people showed up at this hearing, and all of them spoke with great knowledge and understanding of what the problems are. Some of them were experts, and some of them were parents.
Okay.
But everybody spoke with terrific knowledge. Now, you can, there is a link that you can visit to see the transcripts, but it has a caveat before you can even click into it. So I would recommend people, at least if you want to hear my speech, a friend of mine taped it, and it is on my YouTube channel, which is Sallie and Mary, which is SallieandMary. And my speech is at least there. And it basically is typical of many speeches. People speaking from a personal perspective and from a researched perspective.
Okay, in layman's terms, so
Yes.
that parents and uncles and aunts and grandmothers can understand specifically what you're saying.
Yes.
Give me one or two of your primary concerns as it relates to the vaccinating of children.
Okay. There are 3 concerns. One is that they are 100% poison.
Okay, that's a good one.
The second is that they are create all diseases in internal medicine.
Run that back again.
They create all diseases in internal medicine, not just the diseases they claim to prevent, which they do cause, but they also cause other diseases.
Okay, so they're poison and they cause other diseases.
The disease they claim to prevent, plus other diseases. And thirdly, we know the intent now to cause these diseases. And this is all in my bill, Ban Vaccines 2013, which
What is the intent?
The intent is to cause the diseases they claim to prevent. And we have unearthed the Merck chief vaccine scientist saying that cancer and AIDS viruses were put in the polio vaccine way back in the late 50s. So they create all diseases in internal medicine.
Okay.
Well, I find it very interesting. There are 88 diseases that are injected into kids 5 and under in New York. By the time you're 88 diseases, according to the study issued through the New York, I guess through actually the city itself.
Wow.
88 diseases by age 5. And so this new vaccine would be administered once every year. It's not just once. And you're over.
Every year?
Once every year. She has a strong argument here as to why we should all be standing at City Hall demanding to be heard, because they're talking about once a year. Now, you know, the kids get the other diphtheria shots, you know, the one for the mumps and measles, and a whole bunch of others that they get already anyway, that pretty much are mandatory, except there are exemptions.
Well,
the religious exemptions and...
Well, we have to talk about exemptions. That was the other issue I wanted to talk about, because what I had not realized until this hearing, when a gentleman who's calling in later, John Gilmore of Autism Action Network, he stated, for the record, that there is a cap of 1.2% of religious and medical exemptions combined, which means that 98.8% of children are mandated to take the CDC schedule.
What religions would those be?
Does it matter? It's 1.2% of the population.
Well, everything matters. I'm just trying to figure out.
When it's that small a percentage.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out who would be exempt.
It's a great question.
Because it's that small, you know. I mean, if it, you know, if it was larger, I could say, well, there are certain major religions.
Who chooses the religion?
Right.
Will it just be the Seventh-day Adventists? And some of the traditional groups that have been opposed to a whole lot, everything from, I won't say the Pledge of Allegiance on. Are we now saying that the city of New York will decide which religions?
I'm not even saying that, no. I'm just saying that 1.2% of children can get either a medical and or religious combined, 1.2%.
So the reason why I asked is because when you cite a number that small, it leads me to believe that it is more an economic influence than a religious influence. Because
I'll tell you who I think it is. I'll tell you.
Scientologists, or?
No, I don't think it has to do with religion at all. I'll tell you.
I don't either.
I'm about
Yeah,
to tell
I
you.
think
who
it's money.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, tell me.
I think the people who get these religious exemptions are the ones who run the organizations that push back. So the people who run these organizations, their children are protected. It's a way of shutting people up. So if you run an organization that's a pushback organization, and your kids are given the exemption,
okay,
then you won't push so
Political
hard.
argument, yeah.
Okay.
This is over time what I have come to.
Okay.
So
Okay. Now, we live in a time where everything is public information. Everything is all over the television. Everything is all over the internet. And there's a phenomenon of a lot of drugs, and I'm not even talking about vaccines that are given to children, although certainly there are vaccines that have been given to children, you know, that are a cause for major lawsuits right now. And that's just the stuff they put on television, like Risperdal. I think there's a big controversy about the vaccine that they were giving women for the HPV virus. And you mentioned Merck. Merck was one of the pharmaceutical companies that was involved in the case that we refer to as the guinea pig kids, where they were testing toxic AIDS drugs and psychotropic drugs on children, specifically black and brown children, but children whose were in foster care and whose mothers had generally been some sort of drug users in the beginning, or on some sort of assistance program, and if they did not comply, they were charged with child abuse, and the children were put on these drugs anyway. And how they found the records, I think they threw them in the dumpster, and I don't think they still accounted for how many children have died on the program, how many children went blind as a result of this. I don't think they ever disclosed the damage that was done, although certainly they did disclose that major damage was done to great numbers of children, some of those children have never even been accounted for. And it caused a major shakeup in city council hearings that they renamed ACS something else, you know, and they brought in another guy to run it. But that was a major story, a major scandal that was actually broken by the BBC. So there are concerns about the proximity of drug companies, Health and Hospital Corporation, children's charities, foster care, the school systems, the welfare systems. There seems to be this giant cash cow, this multi-billion-dollar cash cow that revolves around the drugging of poor children, you know, just people, really.
Our children in the classroom. I mean, we could just go through drugs that have come over the last 50 years.
Right.
That's absolutely frightening, particularly in New York, where kids are forced in classrooms. If I diagnose you, not necessarily a professional, by the way, the principal, the teacher, that you an overactive, hyperactive child, you need some Haldol or something. You know, these drug companies, these pharmaceutical industries, it's frightening.
Well, they are all not liable. I really want to talk about liability. It's the first thing you brought up, and it's really important. And then we have to get back to the 15 schools that they're going to have a trial on the...
With these drugs?
With, yeah.
This recent vaccine.
Different issue. Yeah, the 15 schools between December 9th and the 20th that they're going to be giving the flu shot, which, by the way, the government of Sweden has officially apologized to the children for all the narcolepsy it has caused there. So that's quite amazing that a government would apologize. But in regard to
No. Let's be clear on this, Sally.
Yes.
This particular drug was administered to children In Sweden?
That's correct, yes. And narcolepsy has, a huge number of them have narcolepsy, which is a sleeping disease. But, yeah, liability, the drug companies aren't liable. The doctors aren't liable. We've talked about this before. UNICEF and the World Health Organization aren't liable. Everybody wants to stick a kid with a vaccine is not liable. And now I understand that the Supreme Court, who upheld the fact that the drug companies aren't liable for and the doctors for the vaccines, has also stated now that generic drugs they will not be held liable for generic drugs. Which means, for example, I went to get my son who had a cold, and he went and he got a Z-Pak, which is a brand name. Now, they immediately fill it with a generic drug. And I said, no, I want the name brand. Well, I want to tell you, a generic used to be $10. The name brand would be $20. Now, I don't know what the generic one is, but the name brand was $175.
Not surprised, yeah.
My son got over the flu by using colloidal silver. Colloidal silver, very cheap, very healthful, very good. Dr. Colia, I was just on the phone with her today. I said, my son has food poisoning. She said, colloidal silver. She goes, why do you even bother calling me anymore? You know? So Dr. Colia used to have a show here on Manhattan Neighborhood Network.
Flu bug, but that's one of the things that has been brought to bear in the media, that we have been taking penicillin and stuff so regularly that viruses are no longer responsive to it. So they are asking that you not take these things unless it is absolutely necessary, because we have become immune to super strains of things like the flu, So we have been overprescribed, over-vaccinated to the degree that even if it did work, which it doesn't work, but even if it did, it doesn't anymore.
Right. Well, while people are paying attention before our call-in guests, I have to get out the rest of this message because it's so important. So first of all, I need everybody to show up on December 11th for the meeting and vote on the mandates for the flu, the pneumococcal, and any vaccine which they may require for 5 and unders to attend preschool, daycare, and kindergarten. Go to the Gotham Center in Long Island City at 10 a.m., room 1222, I believe. And you can visit my page, Sallie O. Elkordy for NYC Public Advocate. I will have it pinned to the top so you know where to go. Also, there are 15 schools between the 9th and the 20th that they say you must sign up for. They keep extending the date to sign up for.
That's the 9th and the 20th of this month, December.
Right. They keep extending the date that you can sign up to have your child be given a flu shot in 15 of these schools throughout the 5 boroughs. And the ones I had time to look up before my computer went down were K through 5. So the ones that I saw were the youngest of the schools. And this flu shot, I just want you to know, 30,000 nurses have quit their job not to take the flu shot. Why did 30,000 nurses quit their job not to take it? Ask yourselves that. Why is the Swedish government apologizing to their families for their children having narcolepsy? And why did Johns Hopkins University, a doctor at Johns Hopkins University, he's a scientist who slams the flu vaccine. So Johns Hopkins University is where Mayor Bloomberg has donated a lot of money, and I believe one of their buildings is named after him. So I want everyone to pay attention and to send to Mayor Bloomberg the fact that a Johns Hopkins scientist slams the flu vaccine. This was by Sylvia Booth Hubbard on Thursday, May 16th, 2013. It was published, and it's just Google it. Johns Hopkins scientist slams flu vaccine. And okay, so you have these 3 issues, and the last one is I went to the New York City Department of Education, and I clicked on the vaccine schedule. and they refer you to the CDC vaccine schedule, which would be 49 shots through the age of 5, and and 69 total through the age of 18. And when I do
I
that,
don't remember that many.
it says all in capital letters underline students.
Yeah, but 3. Thank God for my mama.
I don't remember that many.
Thank God
Wow.
for my mama. We were poor. Come on, I'm sorry.
It says
And in Mississippi.
It says all students underlined in capital letters must get these, all new students, and in another place it doesn't say new. But this is a tremendous, just the basic vaccine schedule, if only 1.2% of the children can get out of this horrific schedule, this is my fight all over the world, is this basic schedule of 49 shots, 49 doses of 14 shots through the age of 5. Now they want to add these 2 plus anything else they come up with, and now they're doing trials in schools of a vaccine which has failed. So I'm just saying, we have to get out to the schools. I'm hoping my friend John Gilmer will call in with the list of schools, but I would Google that too. Which schools will be targeted from the 9th to the 20th for children to receive a flu mist up the nose or in the arm? I saw 2 different pictures, and they're unspecific in terms of which kind they will be getting.
Now I'm glancing at some of the CDC's evaluations. Apparently, flu is not a single type virus. It's
Mutates.
Correct.
Yes.
And how effective the flu virus is contingent upon a lot of things. It's contingent upon the season. It's contingent upon what type of flu you have. It's contingent upon age. It's just so nebulous in nature as to whether or not this thing works, if it works.
Well, I have a friend who works in an emergency room, and she said that 90% of the people who came in with the flu had been vaccinated against it, which backs up the fact that I say the intent is to give the disease they claim to prevent. So,
Well, that's the old wives' tale anyway.
Yeah.
And most people are very nervous about shots, and they only come because the
Right.
system says you must do it.
Right.
I want to travel.
To go to school, you got, I mean, if you don't have your shots, you can't come to school.
Can't leave the country.
Right.
that's
You can't do
another
anything.
issue you bring up.
That's
Thank
what I
you.
want with my daughter, who said to me she wasn't vaccinating her kids, and I said, but now we're going to do some traveling. She said, well, Mother, I will do it by canoe.
What's your daughter's name?
Colia, like my
Oh, yeah,
Well, I would love to meet your daughter.
Well, she said, she's a pistol on the issues of not on the vaccines, but food and medicines generally.
It's
I mean,
all
she
the
really,
same issue. It's
Yeah.
stop poisoning our children. And I have a party this Saturday. I want to invite all of New York and Mayor Bloomberg and the Department of Health. I want to invite everybody to my party on Saturday because we're going to be discussing these issues. We're going to be discussing everybody showing up at the meeting on December 11th at 10 a.m. at the Gotham Center in Long Island City for the meeting and vote. We're going to be discussing, possibly a friend will be calling in shortly about a press conference. But at this party, we have a jazz trio from 6 to 7. Or to 7:15, and then we have a comic, Bill McCarty, and then we are going to have a lecture by the gentleman I'm hoping will call in. Pardon me. And pardon me, please. So we're having a party by lecture by him. Then Dr. Carly will call in and take questions and answers. If you have vaccine-injured children, this is truly a gift. I hope you will come. Children are welcome. And then we're going to have caroling.
Now, where's your party going to be?
It's going to be at 244 West 54th Street on the 10th floor in Studio 2. And it's going to go from 6 to 9. I insist everyone get there at 6 because I have got a swing trio and I don't want you to miss it. It's really a treat. And then, of course, comedy, lecture, Q&A with Dr. Carly. If you have a vaccine-injured child, you can't afford to miss this. And if you don't know your child is vaccine-injured, let's talk about what the problems might be with your child. Maybe they have asthma. Maybe they have food allergies. Maybe they have ear infections. Maybe they have asthma allergies, food, and these are the little ones. But if they have leukemia or diabetes, bring them on in. If they're autistic, for goodness sake, welcome autistic children. Okay?
Especially since most of them are autistic from the drugs that have been given across time.
Well,
Very interesting.
autism almost doesn't have a meaning anymore. I mean, almost anything you do that they think of as straying away from the norm that they set, they classify as autistic. You know, so there's not even like a specific set of circumstances. But what I want to ask you is, the vaccines are mandated, and I'm looking at the CDC report.
Yes.
And
the CDC says we have a very low incidence of flu this year. I gave that to the New York City Health Department.
Well, I'm just reading this, and I'll just take this paragraph, but it's basically all saying the same thing. Each season, researchers try to determine how well flu vaccines work to regularly assess and confirm the value of flu vaccination as a public health intervention. Study results about how well a flu vaccine works can vary based on study design, outcomes measured, population studied, and the season in which the flu vaccine was studied. These differences can make it difficult to compare one study's results with another. So basically, it's a long-winded way of saying, I don't know if it works or not. Being that the Center for Disease Control says categorically in their own writing that there are so many variables that they cannot tell you, they cannot guarantee the efficacy of flu vaccines, who determines and how do they go about determining that it should be mandated in the school system? Who is, I mean...
It seems to me that what we're saying in New York City right now is that your representatives, your city council people, and your mayor will determine. That's what I'm hearing. However,
Wow.
the argument, that the fight has been with when the bill came up on when the Governor Patterson got it, in 2008, when that was brought to the legislative bill came up. And the argument was that the CDC should determine.
Yeah, so what you're telling me basically is that the Center for Disease Control is saying, I don't know, so we're going to take it to the city council? I don't understand.
Well, thanks for bringing this up. The New York State has exemptions, and I've never heard, nor has the gentleman I hope will call in, ever heard of a city saying something's mandated or there are caps on any kind of an exemption that you either can get it or you can't. But your question again, I'm sorry.
My question was specifically that the Center for Disease Control's own writing says that there are so many variables to understand whether or not there's any efficacy in the flu vaccine itself. The Center for Disease Control hedges their bets in such a way as to basically say, I don't know if it works or not. And yet you are telling me that a legal system is mandating that your children are required to take drugs that medical people...
your children 5 and under.
5 and under.
Yes.
And I'm trying to figure out, how does a court system make a determination that your children 5 and under must be mandated to do something that the medical profession itself will not stand behind?
Super duper good question, because I said to the health department, you know, they voted on the size of soft drinks because the mayor was concerned about the health,
drinks, yeah.
the health of the drinks. I said, and you know, it does contain a serious poison, aspartame, but quite frankly, we're talking about formaldehyde and MSG and antifreeze and mercury and aluminum in vaccines. So, you know, why are we not legislating any of this? I've been bringing my bill, Ban Vaccines 2013, to legislators at every level of government. There's something really important you need to know here, because with these flu trials in these 15 schools, what has happened a couple of years ago and which I had an emergency meeting over when it happened, is that a woman by the name of Parker, who does not approve of vaccines, her child was given a flu shot in school, and she sued and she won. But then the health department, or commission, I think it was the Department of Health, countersued, appealed, and they won. You want to know why? And this is why these kids are in uber danger right away. They won because the pandemic law has never been lifted since 2009, and they got away with it. So if the pandemic law hasn't been lifted since 2009, all 15 of these schools, every single kid could be, there's a precedent now. There's a precedent. So even though the parents
what is the
sign up for
specifics of
it-
the pandemic law that requires, even in the case of a pandemic, that requires that legislators and politicians decide what the cure, what the remedy is for that pandemic? Because if you don't,
Legitimate question.
you know, if I'm just confused. You know, it's like, Lucy, you got some explaining to do. If the medical, if the Center for Disease Control, if the medical profession itself is hedging its best and will not stand behind, will not say categorically that there is a problem, this is the solution, how is it that politicians and legislatures get to tell you that this is the solution to the medical problem that the medical industry would not say is the solution? I just don't understand how this is happening.
Right. I agree with you, and they have not offered an explanation because the question
Well,
was
I
put
suggest
to
that we
them.
cut the pockets out of pants and shirts and stuff. There's been no pockets on politicians not to be allowed to have pockets.
And I
That might
think
help.
that's what it is. I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
that's
really,
what it
because we're
is.
talking
There's
about
so
pharmaceutical
much
industry.
money. There's so much money for so many different organizations, you know. And Mayor Bloomberg has come out and categorically says that that New York and the world depends totally on Wall Street money and Wall Street capital.
That's right.
And there is so much money in pharmaceutical companies coming up with new drugs and mandating that people use them. I mean, there is money for everyone, not just the pharmaceutical companies, for the health and hospital corporations, for the doctors who get perks from prescribing these drugs. They get all sorts of perks, all sorts of big money.
Well, you know, I just read an article in Age of Autism the other day, and everybody I've shared it with has said, yay! And it said, vaccines don't cause autism. Pediatricians do.
Yeah.
Ta-da! The vaccine couldn't cause the autism if the pediatrician
didn't recommend
didn't administer it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, man.
Well, this
but you
is-
know, the fact that it all falls on these children 5 and below, based on the assumption, categorical assumption, that that group, if it is vaccinated and made secure from all of the diseases on the planet, then the rest of us won't get them, because that is a group that also passes around, you know, the little colds or whatever you get when you're around them. So that is, we really need to look at it, because, and seriously look at it, and begin to demand that kind of child abuse. Because for me, that's the worst form of child abuse on planet Earth.
What you're referring to is herd immunity, and herd immunity was established in regard to natural immunity.
That's
having
right.
Nothing to do with vaccines.
That's right.
And the people who should be quarantined are the people who've taken the shot, because they're the carriers.
That's right, carrying the shots now. So now that the children have it, they're carrying it
Of course.
from day one. And if a child is given 88 doses of anything, 88 doses of diseases,
Well, the CDC
Please.
schedule calls for 49 doses of 14 vaccines through the age of 5, plus these potential mandates. And if 98.8% of the children are mandated to get that schedule, that is, tell me that's not as close to 100% as you can get. And, you know, these are life-stealing vaccines. They are not life-saving vaccines. They are life-stealing vaccines. And the minute you look at the ingredients, you'll know it. The minute you look at the list of diseases that result, it's all diseases in internal medicine. And the minute you understand the intent to cause these diseases, and the thing is, they have deliberately not done studies There is no vaccinated versus anti-vaccinated study in this country. There was one in Germany done, and they found that vaccinated children had 2 to 5 times the diseases of unvaccinated children. Now, what did they do with that study? They discredited the mathematician who worked the numbers. But this is how far they will go. They will go to any length to stop the truth about these poisons being injected into the bloodstream, directly into the bloodstream of the children. This is a sinister agenda. We can call it nothing else. And we absolutely must stand for the children. I know Colia Clark and yourself, Nat, I applaud both of you, because you have a show that really addresses issues that are extremely important. There is no greater crime against humanity than vaccination. So I am happy that you're having me on your show, because it is a crime. And let me tell you, the children who are dying, and they're dying, but their parents are being accused of shaken baby syndrome. They have a swelling of the brain, which is a completely typical reaction from a vaccine. And although the child has got no bruises, the parents are being, if they make the connection, if they go, hey, my kid was fine before this vaccine, oh, then you must have shaken your baby. Oh, off to jail you go, and for life. So I have a radio program. I interview these people on their way to jail, people who are representing them, who's
For the other Wall Street industry.
well, and so, yeah, the prison industrial
Yeah,
complex
sure.
and the medical industrial complex, and they're all pharmaceutical industrial complex. All I can say is they will kill our children, they will incarcerate the parents, and a friend of mine has started a program, her name is Christina England, that is called Stay Out of Jail, Don't Vaccinate Your Child.
See, I think at the very least, that people deserve more than obscure answers to specific questions, especially when those questions relate to the health, the safety, and the lives of the people they love. Mm-hmm. And especially to those people who cannot defend themselves. Children cannot defend themselves.
Amen.
Children are, we like to say that children are our future, but it's the exact opposite. We are their future.
Right.
They are not our
good
future.
One. I like that.
Yeah,
right on. We are their
future. My children they're not my future.
No.
I've lived my life. What I do dictates their future. Mm-hmm. So when I ask specific questions, I don't appreciate people giving me obscure answers. Mm-hmm. And I have a whole lot of questions, but I'm not getting answers. I'm getting obscure, nebulous, obfuscating answers to very direct questions. The question of viruses, I've asked the question over and over again, because they always tell you that it's the virus that kills you, but the virus never kills you. No one dies of AIDS. You might die of pneumonia, you might die, there are specific things you die from, but no one has ever died from AIDS. No one has ever died from Hep B or Hep C. They might die from liver cancer or something like that. But it's a stretch. First of all, you have to make the connection and and how do you prevent getting pneumonia? How do you prevent liver cancer? What types of holistic approaches can you use to limiting, your chance of dying from. And you don't have to have hepatitis to get liver cancer. And you don't have to have HIV to get pneumonia, But if they give you a treatment and you happen to die, they never say it's the treatment that killed you, They say it's this thing that killed you. I remember in the 80s, and I live in the East Village. And one of the things, we used to talk about it all the time, because a lot of people were coming down. There was a large homosexual community, and there was a large drug community, and people were coming down with HIV. And we used to always marvel at the fact, just, you know, everybody really noticed that people were going in fine and coming out this close to death, you know. And we used to say, what are they doing to them in there, you know?
Yeah.
And they'd say, oh, it's the AIDS, they got the AIDS, but they would walk in quite well. You know, they find out they have their HIV or AIDS or whatever, and they would go for treatment. And shortly thereafter, they would turn to soup right in front of your eyes. But clear up until the time they went to the doctor, you know, they were, you know.
The most important interview I
And I
have
never
heard-
got an answer to those questions.
Well,
What are they doing in there?
I'm going to tell you what I've heard. The most important interview I've heard this year was with the Dr. Jennifer Daniels. And they have taken her license away for curing people holistically. But she is a doctor who went to school at Harvard, and she got her MBA at Wharton Business School. So
Right.
you know who we're dealing with here, right? But because she was both a doctor and a business expert, she sat in a hospital on both the medical and the business executive end of it. And what she said is basically when people check into a hospital, they have you marked for $12,000. But if you don't check out, you're worth $45,000. You're worth, so that's a huge issue, is it not? And another thing that she said that really, this was a remarkable interview, Dr. Colia interviewed her. Another thing she said that really rocked my world is that she was also on a panel of accepting people into medical school. And she said this applies to both medical school and law school. She said it doesn't really matter what your score is. Nepotism, you know, who you're related to, sure, that matters. But what else matters is they put specific questions on these exams to test the water in terms of your ethics. And if you are someone who is less ethical than another, according to specific questions within the exam, you will be accepted. So if you are an unethical person, you're more likely to be accepted to medical school or to law school than if you are not. So these are two, the first thing I said is really quite remarkable, that you're worth $12,000 as a patient, but $45,000 as a corpse.
It almost, and I get back to the point I attempted to make when we first started, that almost every single drug that has been introduced in the last 15, 20 years that has had any amount of time on the market seems to be causing irreparable damage to large numbers of people. When you look at drugs like Prozac and those type of drugs, they were listed as panaceas that, you know, would bring you back from, you know, your depression. And now I used to sit in the house and just slobber, and now I'm, you know, working, you know, in the fire department, you know. And there are so many lawsuits about so many drugs, you know. I mean, Risperdal was a drug that was made for children. You know, your children, your kid is depressed, give him this stuff, you know. And then they say, well, you know, we found out that, you know, the guys grew breasts. If you weren't depressed before,
You are depressed now, buddy. Where's the drug that takes the breast away?
in the gun, in the chamber of a gun, you know. You don't get answers to the question. And one of the primary questions that I have is, how can a physician, how can a doctor say with 100% certainty what a drug that someone else has made, manufactured, and hands him, how does he know what the drug is going to do?
Well, I'm going to tell you what my mother always said, just from her observation across time. One, when sisters, black women, started going to hospitals to have babies, illnesses erupted they'd never had before, not only with the babies, but with women. So she said, I'm going to tell you, you stay away from them hospitals and wait for those doctors. And this holistic thing, we've crossed time, we've had herbs and everything, just name it, this holistic approach. It's as old as the world. And people have been surviving. Now, I grew up in a family of 10, and I can tell you we didn't have any medical doctors. But I had a daddy who was them roots. He didn't even, my daddy wasn't one who had to, he didn't have the religious side of the roots. But I mean, you caught something, you didn't want to catch it because daddy was going to be on the pine tree, under the pine tree, in the woods, coming back with all kind of strange looking stuff from the pond. Well, those folk kept you from having flus. He had everything but the cure, I think, for the common cold. You know? And it's interesting that that generation in which I grew up was the tail end, because it's my generation. Now, by the time we're in our mid-20s, AIDS and this other stuff starts running down the stream. In fact, I'm in my 30s when AIDS started running in, when it's popularized. So we have all of these diseases now that generation seem to have kept under control. Where did that come from?
Well, I think that's the key.
If it's not from the
key
doctors
word,
and the medicine.
control. I think that we have become this culture that looks for panaceas, that looks for cure-alls. And some things are not meant to be cured. Some things are meant to be overcome. And there are colds, you know, you're looking for the cure to the common cold, but it's the common cold. It means that you know. We have a call. Let's take the call. If you have the call, you can put the call through. Yeah, we're looking for this instant panacea for every single thing, you know, and not every single thing needs a panacea. There are some things that are supposed to happen naturally.
And it also sometimes strengthens the body. The body is strengthened from some of the stuff we go through.
And our lifestyles are very, very stressful these days.
Yeah, we got a lifestyle of food and all of this stuff that we did not have any sign of when I was growing up. And I grew up on a farm.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, so you know more about this than most people.
Well,
in terms of
I think it was true probably for the people in the urban, because the South was, you know, was rural. But the old medicines from Africa, the indigenous populations from Europeans who were there, was the old medicines, the old approaches.
Hello, if you're there, caller.
Hello.
Hi there.
My name is David, and
Turn it up just a little bit, the speakers. Just a little. Go on, David. I'm sorry.
in February 2009, the physician's assistant at the medical group that I used to go to gave me a flu shot, which was recommended on a news report that I saw on television. And 2 months later, I needed to urinate more frequently than before. 2 months after that, I had neuropathy in the bottoms of my feet, and I went to the that physician medical group, and they had me see a doctor, and he told me it was a coincidence.
Well, you know, I know somebody, if you go to the National Vaccine Information Center, I hope you will, there's an interview there with a nurse who came down with Guillain-Barré, which is total bodily paralysis after the flu shot. And here she is a medical professional, right? And she can't move. She can't perform her job.
So I got off lucky.
Well, you got off. No. The thing is, there are many different horrible outcomes, and they're not all immediate. Some of them are long-term. But what I'm trying to tell you is, she went through thousands of dollars of tests, and finally one of the doctors said to her, "By any chance, did you get the flu shot?"
Oh.
And she said, "Yes, I did." He goes, "Well, that's it." So after she's gone through she's disabled, and they're sending her through endless tests, and it turns out you got the flu shot. Well, that's it. Well, I want you to know that she was the 8th person just in her hospital to get Guillain-Barré from the flu shot, and nobody's reporting it. And nobody's making the connection to the vaccine. And this woman herself is a health professional. She couldn't get the truth.
And the medical group would not give me the lot number of that the vaccine came from.
So that you couldn't get any compensation. Well, cheer up, you wouldn't have anyway. There's the Vaccine Compensation Board, and it is the doctor's lot in life to keep you from making the, to getting a diagnosis that this happened because of a vaccine so you can claim compensation.
Yeah.
By the time they do that, the time has expired wherein you can claim compensation.
That's right.
Let me ask you a question, because we keep using the phrase "the vaccine," which leads one to believe that it is a. Oh, thank you, caller. Which leads people to believe that it is a single ingredient that is used to treat a single symptom or disease. However, there are a lot of ingredients that go into making vaccines. Is there some way that people can find out what they put in the vaccine that they are telling you to put in your body?
Yes, I have a whole list here. Some of the words are so long they're actually hard to pronounce.
If you ask the doctor, is the doctor supposed to tell you what the heck is in here?
I'm glad you brought it up, because this list here, I don't know if you can zoom in, but if you can, no problem. Go to the physician's warranty of vaccine safety.
We're going to take the call. I think we got one more call. If we do have a call, just bear with us for 1 second, and she'll make this point. And no, you make your point.
Sure. There's the physician's warranty of vaccine safety, which is on about 50 websites. And it has the list that I have right here on my proposed legislation, Ban Vaccines 2013. I also added anthrax, because they added anthrax to the list. They are now going to test children with anthrax.
With anthrax?
With anthrax.
They want to add the HPV to the baby's lineup of, and I heard from someone else, the meningitis they want to add. So,
but I have to do this on my own. You can't, like, when you say my child has to have this vaccine, I can't ask the doctor, well, excuse me, doc, what the hell is in it? And he gives me a list. I have to research. I have to have enough insight as to be able to research this information, or is he mandated to tell me that we got some formaldehyde in here, we got some kerosene in here, we got some anthrax in here?
Because a woman by the name of Representative Andrea Bolin in Maine, where they have a philosophical exemption, which is super easy, you just go, no thanks. You don't have to get a notary, you don't have to get an approval, you don't got to get nothing. You just, no thanks. So she came up with this legislation wherein doctors must disclose to the patients, the parents of the children. I always talk in terms of children, but you have to disclose what's in the vaccine. Don't you know the doctors who were also her representatives, sat as representatives in Maine, went to the mat to fight against that? Why did they want for people not to know well, they might not get vaccinated? I'm like, that's the point. Radio.
Well, I can tell you, I don't take anything, and I recommend to anybody don't take it. You go research the medicine yourself, and you can go online or go to the library, wherever, research the medicine. But I think that's important. There's a sister, Attorney Patricia Flynn, our lawyer, obviously, that on the city side of this, where parents' right to object, she has a case that's already in the courts on the review process, and it's saying, you know, that parents should have the right to say no.
Well, Dina Marie, who I believe is her client, she has both a medical and a religious exemption. Now they've taken them both away from her.
Well, parents have a right to say no. I mean, if you got to get in the streets to fight for your right to say no, your right to your child's health and safety, life and security, ultimately should always rest with the parent, not with the city, not with the court, but with parent, not with the church, with parent.
Why is it so difficult for us to get information as to what they're putting in our food, what they're putting in our body?
That's right.
I mean, it seems like every single thing, like you can't sue DuPont to find out what the heck DuPont is playing with your food. You don't know what it, you don't even know if it's food that you're eating. You know, you do know that there are many countries on the planet that won't even touch a lot of foods made in America because they say it's not food. You can't find out what's in the medications that they're giving you, but you're mandated to take the medications. You're mandated to give the children the medications to your children to get them in school, and the shelves of all the supermarkets is filled with stuff that you don't know what the hell it is, but you got to eat something.
I think I can explain it. This is tyranny, but it is important for you to know that Dr. Paul King informed me, I was not aware, and you might not be either, that we are the only country that did not sign the Nuremberg Treaty.
Among many others, my dear.
Is that right? Well,
treaty on landmines, treaty on the child, treaty. I mean, just go women, political rights.
Right,
this country,
right,
and those that we signed, signed on with the right to it, with an exemption right. That at any point we decide to disagree, that is, if our Senate ratified it, we can pull out.
Is that right? Well, I have to tell you, the Convention on the Rights of Disabled Persons and the Convention on the Rights of the Child take away rights from the children and disabled people and families. So I want to absolutely advocate against UN treaties. I'm talking about the Nuremberg Treaty. And the Nuremberg Treaty lists all of the things that it practically describes vaccines. The United Nations is into peace through annihilation. So if you want to talk Agenda 21 or you want to talk UN treaties, this is not a joke.
Are you suggesting that the UN was an imperial body set up by imperial powers to conduct imperial business?
You only got a minute left. Give us some information. Give us some information that you'd like to get out in this last minute.
Yes, on December 7th, this Saturday at 6 p.m., we are going to party and educate at 244 West 54th Street in Manhattan on the 10th floor in Studio 2. It's going to be fun and it's going to be informative, and Dr. Colia will be on hand to answer your questions about vaccine-induced diseases. Also, on the 11th, go to the Gotham Center in Long Island City and make a huge presence at this meeting at 10 a.m. December 11th. I believe it's Thursday. And just show up.
Which floor?
Flood the place. I believe it's room 1222. Go to my blog, Billion Toddler March for Survival at blogspot.com, and go to my page on Facebook, which is Sallie Elkordy for NYC Public Advocate. That is, I keep that most up to date.
Go to your search engine, type in ban vaccines, and I'm sure you'll get everything she's talking about.
Amen.
We will see you next week. I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope that we have given you some questions to ask. The more people who ask these questions, the closer we get to answers and solutions. So we'll see you next week, and until then, peace.
And everybody's got a right to live.